2.5 years of zero turnover. We're exactly the same staff for 2.5 years, which was a pretty cool accomplishment for us.
Yeah, right.
I suppose, it's kind of interesting. I think when we first set out trying to start a business as behavior analysts, we didn't quite have the full orientation to what are we up to being in the world. We're kind of in like a very real place of how do we survive till tomorrow and make payroll, and how do we do a good job by the students that we have right in front of us in the moment.
And how do we bring behavior analysis to all levels of our organization? Right,
yeah, and that sort of being set out as a goal and as what we saw as the pathway to getting past survival and towards something bigger had us engage in some of the very early activities and looking into ACT and RFT-based research and into really engaging in the staff to kind of plant our flag. And it really was kind of the tool set that empowered us to kind of be sick of the problems of today and choose bigger problems instead, which had us define our mission alongside our staff, define our organizational values, which put us in a position to do something really scary and launch like the Hail Mary, what are we up to in the world, which our staff here really took to heart. We ended up saying this crazy thing like we're here to change the way education works on the planet. And then we all step back and kind of go like, ugh.
Yeah, but we didn't really know how to do that.
Right.
Therefore, we started thinking about, okay, well, what are the variables that impact or stand to impact our ability to do that? And it's obviously our outcomes with our learners, but also high rates of staff turnover. If there is staff dissatisfaction, all of those variables stand to get in the way of our ability to change what's possible in education on the planet. And so looking at all of that and kind of thinking like, okay, well, where do we even start? I think where we started was we actually started with ourselves, right? So like the leaders in the organization actually started doing ACT ourselves.
What did that look like?
Well, I think it looked a little bit differently for both of us, but some of it came from being at UNR, and really, I think what is similar for both of us is it started with RFT because we were at UNR and we had the opportunity to take classes with Steve, and then from there participating in ACT boot camps and some of the landmark worldwide education as well. Beginning to integrate readings into our staff meetings, actually funding our staff to go and participate in ACT boot camps.
From a very direct business perspective, there's payoff in doing this. I mean, without sort of sugarcoating it or making it about anything else, this isn't about altruism or anything. This is a very practical decision we make, and it is the kind of decision that I think a lot of business leaders might look at and think about, how weird it is and how expensive it is to get 25 people in a room every single week so that we can shout each other out and talk about our feelings and the weird thoughts that we're having and meditate together. And, at the face of it, that just looks like a whole bunch of really expensive fluff in an organization. But, I think, as Kendra's pointing out, we had this kind of early introduction and education for ourselves. We were lucky enough to be exposed to this enough to where we're confident to take a risk on it and say, all right, well, if we try it, what can we potentially get out of doing this? And I think it surprised us in terms of how much we continue to get out of it, so much so that we actually started at a really simple level of let's just try one meeting where we just introduce some of this stuff and see how it lands and see what the effect is. And since then, it's moved through our entire organization. When we invest a ton in these kinds of initiatives that our staff become champions of, and in a lot of ways the momentum of that has really carried itself from those few things that we as the leaders had to show up and give a nudge to. Those little nudges kind of became tidal waves fast, to the point where before we knew it, our direct nudges were not really necessary in terms of staff stepping up. They get excited about it. They liked the experience. They could see the benefits for themselves in their own lives. They saw the benefits in the way that having some expertise for themselves allowed them to transfer and give things away to their students. They got them really hungry for more. And so we're pretty frequently being asked by the staff for new initiatives that they've come up with that are entirely generated by the back of the house. And we are generally a yes on that kind of stuff. I mean, we're the kind of organization that everything's a bit of an experiment. And so there's a lot of situations where we don't know at first sight, is it going to work or not? But we're ready to try anyway.
In fact, I remember at one point we were considering doing away with the values staff meeting. There was a conversation about it, just in the sense that we didn't know how. This was before we started doing a lot of the addition of ACT components with our learners, and we just didn't know if staff found a lot of value in the value staff meeting. And then we solicited feedback, and it turned out that it was most people's favorite staff meeting. And even though there are often times where you're confronted in that meeting and you're doing weird things like eyes on with your coworkers, it turns out that that was actually something and uncomfortable that people were really comfortable with doing. And it was really cool. So I think at a time we didn't even realize how much of a benefit we got out of that with our staff.
And in retrospect, I wonder if that, whatever those conditions were that had us put on the table that we might pull back the value staff meeting, in some way might have been our way of answering a question for ourselves about whether this was valued, is really making sure that we made a space for people to choose it or not choose it. And the answer to that was resounding. So I think our own discomfort with whether or not we were wasting time got a very clear response from the staff.
What are some of the outcomes you see as a result of doing these things?
With staff or learners?
Staff, I would say staff and learners, both sides.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things that I can speak to as staff is that, we're all human, right? And I would say that we're all fairly transformed on a good day, but humanity shows up, and we get hijacked by being overwhelmed, feeling stressed. I mean, it is not uncommon for our staff to be running from one session to the next. Many of them run 6 or 7 sessions a day. We're busy and we're up to a lot, and that can result in, understandably, some fatigue. And what I really think that we have cultivated is a culture where there is a space for humanity to show up, but not in a way that someone here is likely to feed the fire of that humanity, but rather people are prepared to really have a values-based conversation with that person that can just allow that whatever's there for them to lose its grip. And so in a moment, in a walk around the building, in a 2-minute conversation, someone can go from being on the ledge where they're about to lose it to being completely reminded of why they're here and what they're up to and the difference that they have the opportunity to make in the next session with the learner. And that's huge because it's the whole culture that does that. It's not as if somebody has to schedule a meeting with me or Donny to get that. They have their people that are just see them bigger than they see themselves, even when they see themselves as, kind of being on the ledge. And that's huge because I also think that it has ultimately decreased people's, looking for different job opportunities. They tend to stick around. There's a lot of reinforcers, and the way that our culture is, the way we, strive to create our culture is such that if you have something blocking your experience of those reinforcers, we're all here to help support you gaining access to those.
What's your turnover rate right now?
Well, we're in expansion, so we're hiring. We don't lose people. I can't remember the last time we lost someone to job dissatisfaction.
In a few years.
We've lost people to graduate school and things like that. We've lost people because we've transplanted them to other fit learning labs, and so. But by and large, it's pretty rare that people are walking away from this gig because there's something wrong with their experience of the work. So turnover is pretty remarkably low. I think recently, before we had this big expansion, we had a run here where we hit 2.5 years of zero turnover, where we had exactly the same staff for 2.5 years, which was a pretty cool accomplishment for us.
Yeah, for real.
So one of the things that we do, and this is a little bit different in each fit learning, but we've grown the fit learning network such that if somebody was interested in this application of our science, there are opportunities all over the United States to get involved. Here in Reno, we offer an internship program. And so it kind of depends on our needs, but generally speaking, each year we would bring on a cohort of interns. And then through that internship, folks have the opportunity to be hired on as a learning coach. And we have a similar program in our Portland office as well. So anyone who is interested in information about joining our team could always email us, go to our website, see where all the various locations are. The directors are indicated for every site on the website. And lots of those folks are hiring. So individuals who are looking for what does it look like to apply the science of behavior to education can answer that question.